Since then, Bitcoin is still on this corrective path. There's some silver lining for the bulls here, which is that we have a lot of short sellers in the same spot up here that haven't been taken out. But the fact that we continually made these insignificant higher highs has been a big concern, and the price action that's followed so far has been quite nasty, at least for the bulls. But we also have some stack liquidity on the bottom side of the market. So we're reaching a point now where the overall trend is going to speak, because obviously on the super high time frame, Bitcoin's been in an uptrend for a while. And then on the more local, which is the last couple financial quarters, Bitcoin's been on the downward move. So the question is now, does that super high time frame trend continue, or is this new trend that's been forming going to take precedence? And I think we're going to have our answer soon, because like I said, we got a lot of stop invalidations and liquidations on the top side that are all grouped together, same thing clustered together on the bottom side. So I think we're going to have our answer very soon as to whether or not this new trend, which has been downward, is going to be the new theme, at least for the foreseeable future, or will the 4-year cycle get crushed and Bitcoin continues to go higher? I'm leaning towards, you guys know I don't like to be bearish, but I am leaning a little bit more bearish, and I have been the past couple months. But the good news is the chart's going to tell us the answer. And so literally all we need to see is what happens under here or what happens above here. And as long as there's not like an instant reversal, like something like this or something like this, if it actually does, if we do see a significant breakout on either side of the market, that's going to tell us what kind of climate we're heading into for the rest of December, and then probably a lot more than that. As you guys can see, since we made these highs here, we've been making lower highs. Since we made these lows here, we've been making higher lows. So price continues to squeeze, and as most of you know, that just means invalidations are going to keep stacking up. We have some icebergs that are still setting up shop on the bottom side of the market. They flickered a little bit when we had these pumps come in, but most of these pumps have just been absolutely negated and reversed with haste very quickly. I mean, you can see the last two have just been slaughtered, which obviously isn't likely to happen in a bull market. But at the same time, we can see it happening on the bottom side as well. Usually it's going to take a bit longer on the bottom side in Q4, which is what we've seen. So we've seen the reversals on both sides of the market. I guess the big question is now, where do we go? You could take positions here if you don't already have any. But if you're willing to wait, then you really just need to see what happens here and here, because it's going to show us if there's an imbalance of supply and demand. Or if there's not an imbalance of supply and demand, then we have a good idea of what the trend is going to bring, and whether or not there's going to be a continuation is a lot higher likelihood. So remember, shorts get squeezed out. We're going to have a lot of buys on the derivative books. If there's not enough demand to match that on the spot books, then we'll see that imbalance of supply and demand occur right here. If there is enough demand though, then you can fix the structure, but the structure still looks pretty bad. And then same thing on the bottom side, right? If longs get invalidated, stopped out, liquidated, then a lot of selling is going to hit the derivative books. If we don't have supply, follow that on the spot books, then we'll get a reversal and we'll be able to see the imbalance of supply and demand. So where we're at currently, it's really fucking hard to tell what's in control. Is it supply or demand? But based off of all the structure that I've seen and even what's happened in the last couple days, I'm leaning towards supply has control right now, which means the bears have control. Until I see something that proves otherwise, like something that would occur here or here, unfortunately Bitcoin does look pretty weak right now. Doesn't mean Bitcoin's going to zero, as you guys know, but could we get a low lower than 80K? I think we could. And the question is what happens underneath there. It's not like I can immediately say, oh, if we go under 80K, it's going to have some big revival and it's going to start the bull train back up. But it could. I just need to see the structure that comes in, because if we keep it simple here, we were able to make higher lows, higher highs, but they weren't significant, as you guys know. And that just shows that supply is still heavily in control. The good news is the icebergs have set up shop, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to lead to a big pump. In fact, a lot of the times it'll go down and fill those icebergs before we'll see a reversal. There is more silver lining for the bulls here. We still have stacked liquidity in multiple areas. It's kind of hard to see it on the daily, but there's some stacked liquidity here, and now you can even argue here. So that's good. In classical crypto charts, this used to be very bullish. Now it's become a little bit less bullish because the last couple years we've been seeing equal highs and equal lows form, but they're never taken out and the trend continues until they're eventually taken out way later down the road. So normally, to put it simply, normally this would be really bullish, but given the market climate the last couple years, it's not as bullish because of how the meta is sort of shifting. However, at least it makes it very simple, right? If we go out and clear these highs, we know it's time to pay attention because we're going to get a clear sign of what the supply and balance looks like. And whether or not there's going to be an opportunity there is going to be dependent on the price action that's happening at that time. And so, while it is a bit frustrating, at the same time, it makes the opportunities really cut and dry. I'll talk about Bitcoin a little bit more in a second here, but let's have a look at Legacy because I think a lot of people are buzzing about the commodity markets and then also the stock market as well. And I'll talk about Ethereum in a second too. But I'll leave Bitcoin up on the side. Was hedging long and short on several coins. Now most longs taken out and shorts running. Yeah, that's called being net short. Usually, the market will usually determine whether you're going to go net short or net long. But it's good that you're hedging, man. So the S&P 500 still looks fine. I told you guys last week that we could see a pullback, and it took a while before that it actually came in this week, and it was kind of hovering last week. I am a little bit concerned because the VIX structure has broken on the bottom side, which would be bullish, but we haven't seen volatility completely subside. It's normal that you'll have a little bit of lag that goes on, but still a little bit concerned. So I think I don't know if I've explained this as simply as I should have on the volatility index, and this is what has me a little bit spooked about the legacy markets. So the bottom side structure has cracked, which means that the probability of us going lower on the VIX and higher on the S&P 500, it's more probabilistic that that'll happen. However, if it doesn't happen, that's obviously a red flag, right? If something is more probabilistic to happen and then it doesn't happen, that's an interesting point. But what makes it really interesting is the fact that we have fragile structure on the top side now on the VIX in both spots. So not only do you have a dynamic where sort of the local structure is more probabilistic to go lower, but if that doesn't happen, you have fragile structure on the top side that could be taken out. So stock market should go up, but if it goes down again in a big way, it could be a massive way. Why did we dump today? CPI was great. Yeah, because the price is all that matters. Those things are good, but usually it's buy the rumor, sell the news type of thing. Like paying attention to CPI is important to some degree, but it's nothing compared to the chart. We have to try and be as unbiased as we can here, right? And when we look at even like a Bitcoin weekly chart, I mean, we've expanded quite a lot. So it's not completely unrealistic to see a downtrend start to form a bit, particularly with the 4-year cycle, even though that's kind of a meme. Do you see the numbers? Yeah, they were good. They were good. There's other things in macro, which I'm not going to get into right now, maybe later into the stream, because most people come here for the charts, but there's some things happening in the macro side that are obviously concerning. Anyways, so yeah, that's what we really need to see another all-time high on the S&P, because just similar to Bitcoin, we're reaching a point where, sort of like a pressure cooker, we're reaching a point where we're going to have a big move coming. At least on crypto and probably on the S&P 500 as well, and across the board for that matter. And if that big move is a downward move, it could crack a lot of this really fragile structure on the top side. So it's more likely that the S&P will make an all-time high, but in the event that that likelihood doesn't happen, the inverse of that is quite bloody. We've seen times where the S&P has caught itself even in really dangerous waters, so that's still possible, but you don't necessarily want to go to the dangerous waters. Gold's in an interesting spot. So we just swept the highs, right? Gold made a new all-time high, but it's pretty lackluster. And the last time we've seen that on Bitcoin and other financial instruments that are alternative money, quote unquote, is can be quite detrimental. So we still have the rest of the day on gold, and even in one daily close below the previous all-time highs isn't the end of the world. But once you start getting multiple daily closes below the previous all-time high after you've made that new one, that's where you start to see a potential bigger pullback. And the bigger pullback doesn't happen until you're deeper. But once you get deeper, then it can get really bad. So gold's in a little bit of a fragile spot because the breakout to new all-time high was pretty lackluster so far, at least on the day. I mean, we're gonna have to see it look a lot better in the next couple days, or it's gonna be a really good spot, I think, to hedge against gold holdings. Silver's still fine though. This new high that we got was a little bit insignificant. So if we're just being completely fair and marking out the highs on silver, so we got this one at the beginning of the month, and then these two more recently. And again, just like gold, it does have time to save itself, but from the first high to the second high, we almost had a 10% move. And from the second high to the newest high we just made, it's about 3%. So you can interpret that as buying, slowing down, or selling, picking up. But in the next, pretty much by the time this week ends, we want to see gold and silver actually a bit higher than where they are right now. Otherwise, we will hit either a big correction or at least consolidation. I told you guys on silver that I was expecting that here, and that could still happen if this is insignificant. So we could still find like a longer period consolidation on silver, depending on what happens in the next couple days. And then gold could be a lot bigger of a dump if we don't see something more significant soon. So I think silver would handle the storm a lot better. But I guess if gold tanks hard enough, then silver will likely follow anyways. The dollar's in a tricky spot because the local structure broke a bit, but I mean, it's still fine where it's at. It's still fine. The plan hasn't changed on the dollar. I just got a little bit spooked there. It's still aiming for above 102. So insignificant lower lows. Look for the high that created it. This is still the spot to target on the dollar. But again, it's just a probability. It's not a guarantee that's going to work out. But, that's how I've positioned, is to expect a new high on the dollar. So take that how you want if you're trading the euro or the pound, or the yen for that matter. Although the yen's a little bit different because we have... It's very, very likely that the Japanese will continue to raise the rates, and so the yen might actually see some love from the foreign exchange markets. Okay, so oil plan is still going the same. We had a little bit of a sweep of the low, but it's so insignificant, I don't know if I would count it. Oil's still in the same spot where it's too late to short it unless you're really aggressive. And longing it is pretty dangerous. So it's kind of a hands-off situation. Again, unless you're really aggressive, you could short it, which I'm sure some people did. But if you want to be a bit passive, you have to wait for it to kick up first. Remember, there's an ebb and a flow. It usually doesn't go straight down, except for that one time it went fucking negative. But normally, you want to wait for it to kick up. Whenever you're bearish on something, you want to wait for a rally before you short it. Whenever you're bullish on something, you want to wait for a dump before you long it. If you're using leverage, right? And that's been particularly true with Bitcoin, right? If you've been bearish on Bitcoin, you just wait for the rally and then you look to short it. I mean, it's been happening so many times now in this downward move. Now, if you're bullish on Bitcoin, then like I said, you would wait for the dip, which would be occurring under here before looking to long it. Unless you have some reasoning that leads you to believe that it's very likely that will pump soon, but usually the price is going to tell the story. So even if bullish news comes out on the U.S. economy or Bitcoin news or whatever, it doesn't necessarily affect the price that much. It might pop it a little bit, but ultimately there's ebbs and flows, right? Once something has started, good news will not necessarily stop it. And same thing if we're going upward, right? If Bitcoin's on the upward moves, it doesn't mean bad news will halt it. Because a lot of the time, once the market has spoken, no amount of QE, no amount of good CPI is going to change where it's going. It might change it slightly for intraday stuff, but the overall trend will usually still take precedence. Okay, so Ethereum, which has been really unfortunate because I think Ethereum would be doing a lot better if Bitcoin wasn't dumping so much. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? Any altcoin is still going to be succumb to Bitcoin market sentiment. Bitcoin market sentiment is still going to be at the mercy of the S&P market sentiment. So even if something looks good, if the bigger market caps with more in the alpha side of things are going down, they're still going to go down as well most of the time, as long as the market cap's big enough, which Ethereum fits into that almost perfectly. So probably going to get a new low on Ethereum here. And then the last spot to hold it is around 23. If 23 doesn't hold, then the structure breaks. So you don't want to go back down to 21 since it's already been done. So if 23 doesn't hold, then and Bitcoin still looks really weak or Bitcoin still dumping, then you can make the argument that we'll go under this 1300, 1400 level that we printed earlier in the year. That's definitely possible. So it's kind of in a fragile spot, and like I said, it's very unfortunate because I think Ethereum would be doing a lot better if Bitcoin wasn't dumping so much, and I think that's probably true for a lot of altcoins. Not all of them, but a good portion of them, like I said, are still at the mercy of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's still dumping here, Jesus. But yeah, there's a lot of bullish news that's coming out, and so people can't really understand why Bitcoin's dumping with all this bullish news. And this is why I always say you have to rely on the price chart. The price chart will tell the story, and really all you're looking for is the supply and demand and what the crowd, where the crowd will take action at the same time. If we do go for a new low under 80K though, you could argue that we're in for a deeper bear market than maybe assumed. And I think it's also because of people are pretty unsure about the stock market right now. There's a lot of old school technical analysis guys that are waving the red flag for the stock market. I think it's too early to do that just yet. But I see the reasoning as to why they're doing it. And I think it's more, like I said, more likely we get a new high on the stock market, which should help out Bitcoin, which should help out the altcoins. In the event that we don't though, and it goes sour, then I think everything's going to take a massive hit across the board. Tesla is still working out really nicely. You don't really want to fail it here, but it's not a big deal. It's done enough. So Tesla's still soaring, as I've mentioned, waiting for these lows to be taken out on Tesla. And it's working out quite nicely. The rest of it, I won't bore you guys with all the common stocks, but most of the Mag 7's doing really good today, which is a good sign. And the mid caps are kind of floating pretty well. So maybe it's a last hurrah of exuberance, or there's actually some legs to this. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Job numbers are negative, that's why people are freaking out about stocks. Yeah, I mean, the unemployment obviously is not very good right now. So this is the unemployment for the United States. This was the COVID sort of pop on unemployment, but it's starting to rally up again. And you know, it's a situation that all of us have sort of been talking about for a while, which is if lowering rates doesn't fix unemployment, then you're in a whole new ballgame, because it usually does. Like even if you look at the COVID one, right? Huge spike in unemployment, they lower the rates fast, and unemployment comes back to reasonable levels. But now they're trying to cut the rates fast, and unemployment's not going down, at least not right now. So that's a bit concerning, because that's a problem that is no longer fixable until we start a downward spiral and find and flush out leverage and find a bottom, which could take a while depending on how severe the dump is. They're too fucking slow cutting. Honestly, dude, I think they cut. I think they're cutting faster than probably. Like I said the same thing too, right? For the last year or so, I was saying, oh, they're usually late on the ball, and they're slow to cut the rates when they should be faster at it because, unemployment was going up. But at this point, I think they should just try and float a little bit, but we'll see. They're still gonna cut them fast, don't worry. ETH Bitcoin's still fine. We're starting to challenge the structure a bit here, but it's still okay. So ETH against Bitcoin still looks fine. It looks a little bit worse, obviously, lately, but it's mainly because if Bitcoin's gonna dump 3%, Ethereum's gonna dump 7%. So it is quite unfortunate because I think Ethereum would be doing a hell of a lot better if Bitcoin wasn't in these murky waters. And not only that, if Bitcoin continues, then Ethereum's structures are going to start to break. But it still looks fine right now. It's getting close to not fine, and that would be pretty spooky. Yeah, I talked about the Japanese interest rates. So that usually the Japanese interest rates going up is bearish. What it means though is that the yen actually could finally start doing better against the dollar because the yen's been sort of consolidating for the past couple years. But yeah, you raise the interest rates, the expectation is that the inflation will go down. While at the same time, while the U.S. is cutting rates, so you have Japan raising rates and the U.S. cutting rates, it means it's probably likely that the yen will do good against the dollar. As far as the euro and the pound go, and the franc, they're probably still gonna do worse against the dollar though, because the monetary policy in Europe is still following the U.S. pretty closely, at least compared to Japan. I don't know if it's necessarily priced in though. This is unusual times, what's happening in monetary policy, and then also the how the economy is reacting to the monetary policy. I think it's not, a lot of people haven't seen this kind of behavior in their lifetime, which leads me to believe that we're either gonna be able to float this thing higher or it's gonna pop. Do you think 2026 is gonna be a bad year? It's possible. I don't know. There is a lot of good things that are happening, but at the same time, is it too late? And so if inflation continues to rise at the same time that unemployment's rising, that's a ticking time bomb. But the good news is usually we just go up and to the right. That's sort of the counter argument for the weak economical indicators is that the S&P just keeps going up and to the right, and anybody who said that it's not going to go up and to the right has been wrong. Therefore, it's always going to go up and to the right. That's kind of the logic, and honestly, that's been winning out, right? Regardless of what kind of data comes in. But at some point, that's not going to happen, and the higher it's floated, the more leverage it's in the system, the harder the fall. Having corrections like this is healthy for the market. You don't want to just go straight up, because then it's just it's all just propped up by the amount of leverage in the system, and it's leverage on leverage too. It's not just leverage. It's just it's no secret that the U.S. is in a ton of debt, but not only the U.S. being in a ton of debt as a government, also the people are in a ton of debt too, and even the quote-unquote sophisticated market participants are leaning more into leverage as well when it comes to longing this bad boy. A 9K correction. You'd have to go to the top side for that to work. But yeah, so the alt market, no secret there. It's been getting beaten up a bit here. It's not as bad as you would expect though, because normally when Bitcoin is down on the day, alts are down like 5-10%. So they're still going to go down when Bitcoin goes down. But the fact that they've showed more resilience than they have in the past is already a good sign. I'm not saying it's a reversal and we're going to have an alt season or anything like that, but the more times that we see alts show strength while Bitcoin is going down, and showing strength is really just not dumping like crazy when Bitcoin's dumping, but the more times we see that, obviously it's pointing towards higher likelihood that maybe we could have a reversal on alts. But look at these fucking daily candles, man. They're just atrocious on Bitcoin. As far as liquidity goes in the last month, the bigger liquidity for the derivative market, at least for the short sellers, is still at that high that we printed. So it's around 95K, where a lot of shorts get squeezed out. There's obviously this here too that I've been talking about, which is all these equal highs, which will give us a nice little example of whether or not there'll be imbalance of supply and demand. So there's some cheeky sniper levels you can actually look for here on the next kick up on Bitcoin to see if they work, but areas that haven't been tested that are sort of sniper levels on Bitcoin to look for the short is from 91.4 all the way up to 92.4. So in this pocket here, because if this trade doesn't work out and you get invalidated, it should be a big invalidation, which means that you cut the loss quickly before it actually does rally a lot against you. But if it does work out, then it shows really strong fluidity, and it could be a position that really runs. So a cheeky area to look for on Bitcoin if it does decide to kick up. The bottom side is much harder to call because there's not high time frame confluence. You would be grabbing a long right now is very fucking difficult because normally fluidity for the bulls is worse than bears on average with Bitcoin, which means that it's easier to grab a short position than it is a long position in general. But then also, if you don't have any high time frame confluence over here on the left, then it becomes even more difficult. So the only play for a long, like I said earlier in the stream, but really the only play if you really want a long Bitcoin is wait for this to get flushed out, and then you have to use the local price action, which could lead to you getting invalidated a couple times before any of the longs work out. And then even then, will that long lead to something that has legs to it is the question. So there's really not a lot of good spots unless you want to get kind of fancy with it and get a little aggressive. But you'd have to really believe that the longs are going to have legs to them, because like I said, you can try and grab it here once we flush it, but you might get stopped out a couple times because you're going to have to use the lower time frame. And the result of using the lower time frame is it gets pretty messy sometimes, as you guys know, which means, it's going to be hard to grab. Do you guys have Bitcoin ATM machines in your countries? Yeah, there's some in LA too. Ideological accumulators? What do you mean by that? Yeah, I've never heard that phrase before. But yeah, Solana, I mean, it couldn't even take out the highs before going lower. The Solana chart really doesn't look good, guys. There's a Hail Mary play here on Solana, which I think could produce a long. I don't know if it's the long that's going to take you to all-time highs, but it's sort of the last stand for the Solana rally, which is around 110 to 111. I have to pay attention to how it behaves here. But if this is not held, then we have a huge void on Solana, and it could get really bloody. And even if it does hold, we still have a lot to conquer on the top side afterwards to make me confident that it'll actually lead to something, because the fluidity on the bear side has been rather strong. So first step for Solana is actually holding 110, 111, and then seeing if there's some legs to it after it starts to combat some of the supply zones. But other than that, it looks pretty bad, unfortunately. It looked pretty good here, like it was doing great, and then just paired with the fact that we had the big dump on Bitcoin and what happened in early October, the trend just completely bent. Even with all the inflows, so you want to be careful with the bullish news or bearish news, just news in general, or anything that would be lead your decision making outside of the chart. Because sometimes, and this is, I mean, you can see this in the American economy. Like, for example, in the American economy, right, which is the biggest, even when QE starts, or even when all this good news comes out about how it should help the stock market, usually the market has already spoken, and the supply and demand is already evident on the price chart. And so good news, good improvements, whatever, it might affect it in the short term. Ideally, we'd love for it to affect it in the long term, but sometimes once the market has spoken, it doesn't matter. Once the trend bends, it's really hard to try and fix it through XYZ being announced or whatever it is. If the market's big enough. If it's a small market, then it can easily be influenced by FOMO. But once we get to these kind of market caps across the board in crypto, like Solana 100 billion plus, Bitcoin 2 trillion, once you get to those kind of sizes, it's hard to fight the supply and demand. Like, it's hard. It becomes a lot harder to manipulate it. It becomes a lot harder to influence it through like collective action. It's a different beast, right? It's a lot bigger. You saw an 80-year-old man stacking money to a Bitcoin ATM machine. Went over there just to be sure he wasn't getting scammed. He said that a relative sent him 10K via bank from another country. Asked him to deposit it since they don't have it in their country. $10K in my country is a yearly net salary. Old guy was there with a big bag of money. That's funny. No, Bitcoin does have use cases and stuff, but usually by the time Grandpa's using it, maybe it's time to at least look to hedge it, right? That was nice of you to check to make sure he wasn't getting scammed, but yeah, I mean, if it's from a family member. If you have thoughts on MicroStrategy, it's just gonna follow the Bitcoin chart. In fact, it's getting fucked pretty bad. I'm gonna zoom back into Bitcoin here because it looks like we got some action happening at the lows. But yeah, I mean, you guys know that the institutional guys, the old heads, are all saying like, oh, the play is to you buy Bitcoin and then you short MicroStrategy. And that's becoming very popularized amongst the old heads. I don't know how good of a play it is, honestly. I think it's a bit exuberant, and they'll probably get punished if Bitcoin does end up reversing with some strength. But it seems to be working out quite nicely for them. So there could be a little bit of a bullish divergence on the daily forming. So if the new low that gets printed on MicroStrategy is insignificant relative to the lows that have been made in the past, then there's a potential play for it to turn around. But if it just falls off a cliff, then there's no play there. What's up, Leo? But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? If Bitcoin is going to continue to dump, MicroStrategy is probably going to dump even harder. Think of MicroStrategy almost like an altcoin to Bitcoin, just like Ethereum is an altcoin to Bitcoin. It's very similar how it behaves because it's a smaller market cap attached to the market sentiment of Bitcoin. That's an altcoin in a nutshell. At least the bigger ones. Same thing for like the mining stuff as well. But I mean, it looks bad, right? It looks bad, but there's a world where, it just traps all the bears it can, and then we get a pump, and then we finally get the real dump. I don't know who Chanos is. But yeah, man, the thing about it is, like, you can take aggressive short scalps on Bitcoin. You just have to wait for it to kick up a bit and then look for it. You can't just jump in at the bottom. It might work, but usually there's an ebb and a flow, right? Even though, like for instance, on this Bitcoin chart, when we first cracked 100K, it looked like when we're on the daily chart, it looked like it was just a straight shot up. But there was, if you went down to the 1 minute, there was still pullbacks and stuff that happened. It's usually not a 1 minute candle that just takes you straight up. Same thing on the bear side of the chart. Every once in a while it happens, but we don't like to assume that because it has happened in the past, rarely, that this is going to be the time that it happens again. It might. This daily candle's pretty fucked. I'm not going to lie. This is a fuck daily candle. Even with the S&P doing good today, it's just, it looks bad. We'll see how these icebergs behave. If they're actually going to hold the county line or if they'll run for cover. But the icebergs that we're seeing right now are not reminiscent of the times that we've gone into a big dip on Bitcoin and it ends up rallying significantly. Like the icebergs that were here were fucking ginormous. These ones are, it's not even close. They're big, but in order to really find that bottom, if I'm being very critical, I'd want to see it similar to here or similar to what we saw here as well. On both of those lows, we just saw enormous bidding coming into the market. Demand just came out of nowhere. On these lows so far, this was pretty big, but it wasn't the same. And another thing that concerns me, just very simple structure. Both the times in the past where we had, significant pullbacks, it was lower highs and lower lows. In this case, it's been higher highs and higher lows, which I know is very simple, but it just shows you that longs haven't been flushed out yet, and shorts have been. In this example, longs got flushed out, shorts never got flushed. Pump it. Same thing here. And then the inverse of that is shorts get taken out, but longs start to cluster together. It's like all the shorts clustered together here, which led to a pretty big move. And the shorts clustering here as well, which led to a pretty big move. Now we have longs clustering at the bottom. It hasn't been that much time, but if this structure continues to develop the way it is, then it would lead me to believe that there's a bigger pullback on the horizon. It's also quite surprising that we haven't gotten any kind of... I mean, we got some rallies out of Bitcoin, right? But I would have expected that we get a little something more. So maybe that's in the cards as well, but a little bit something more right before it actually pulls back, like going up and challenging 112 or 110, something like that would have been... I mean, it wouldn't have looked great dumping from there, but at least it would have showed that supply is not in this much of a stranglehold of the market. Yeah, 0.25% to buy paper Bitcoin is a crazy fee. But if you see stuff where, like if you're on Twitter and stuff and you see really good news, don't think that that's just going to lead to the price pumping. It's not that simple. In fact, it's usually has already pumped a little bit and then it's on its way to reversing by the time that you hear about the news. If anything, counter trading it can be advantageous, but you have to figure out what kind of environment you're in. Are you in a market where demand is outweighing supply? Or if it's the inverse and supply is outweighing demand, then maybe you can get a pump, but will the pump be able to maintain? It's one thing to get a price higher. It's another thing to hold that price at a higher level before, the Bart Simpson pattern comes out. But yeah, so as of today, unless you're really brave, you can take a position where we're at. But, and it might change even right now because we're really fucking close to it. But you have to wait for something big to happen. And like I said, we're really close to it. It could happen today. We just have to, we're trading at 85.6 right now, right? If we go below 85, that's where the fireworks come in. I don't understand the mechanics of Bitcoin as a Wall Street product. It goes into the same category as gold or silver. It's a quote-unquote uncorrelated asset. So it's like hedging against the stock market is buying Bitcoin. Same way that people believe that hedging against the stock market using gold is a viable approach. It might be. I don't know though. Usually that stuff kind of just moves together, right? Stock market and gold both getting all-time highs again and again and again. You think that when a stock market dumps, gold's going to keep making those all-time highs? I don't think so. What's up, Rival? Do you think we'll fall to the 70K area? Yeah, I don't know. If we get to the 70K zone, we're in deep water. Like, it's... I know I've been critical of these rallies on the way down. I told you guys, every time we get a rally on Bitcoin, I'm going to be critical of it. Not because I want to be, but because of the nature of the price. If we get to the 70K levels, I'm going to be even more stringent on the rallies. I'm going to have to see really strong structure being printed. You know, we might see something that we saw. Ooh, it's starting a bit here. A little bit of the fireworks coming in right now. Okay. So even on the 48-hour and the 1 month on the liquidation heat map, that's where we're dipping into it right now. So the flood's coming in a bit here. But what I was going to say, which is kind of a silver lining thing, is if this is reminiscent to the 2018 moves, then what we'll see here, and we could see a fight start to brew, but we could see something like this. And then it falls down to sub 70. If I see this structure start to form, then I'll be incredibly bullish. Well, at least bullish enough for us to get a pop, right? And then maybe something else. I don't like to project this far into the future, but you know, if I was to try to do it, I could see something like this happening. We're really close. We just flushed out a lot of the longs that were entered today and yesterday and today. But as far as the ones that have been around since the beginning of the week, we're getting close to those. And some of these invalidations that have creeped up to use this as an invalidation are stacking here on the 1 month liquidation heat map. So I don't know. We might get some fireworks right now. Next year will be better. Yeah, man, I just take it one step at a time. It might be better. I certainly hope it will be. And better is relative, right? If you're bearish, then you'd want it to keep dumping. But I have to look at the structure before I can make those kind of calls. I don't like to time it or predict that far into the future. But you know, if I see it make good structure, and then I'm more than happy to say that it's bullish. It's just unfortunate because the structure that we've been making on Bitcoin has not been good structure. And you guys know, man, I always try and lean more bullish. I always try and help Bitcoin out as much as I can, but at the end of the day, I'm a trader, and I can't be blinded by bias. What's the next level? That's a hard question, 80. The reason being is because we don't have high time frame confluence. Technically, the only high time frame confluence that's left on the bottom side would be all the way down here at 76 to 78. This is the only area of high time frame confluence. So, and this isn't going to happen overnight. So, in terms of like opportunities that you could take advantage of sooner than later, like sooner than this, would be, they're more difficult to get because since you don't have high time frame confluence, you don't have a sniper level to work with. You have to use the local. So you have to wait for this to get flushed, and then you have to see some sort of rebound, and then you can go to the top side. The issue with this though is, like I said earlier in the stream, it's hard to grab a long here because it's very messy most of the time. So you could get stopped out a couple times before it comes to fruition. And then this might be the most you get out of the long, because that's where you enter, where it sort of looks like a good area to look to short it, which is here to here looks pretty good. And then if you can get more out of it, then that'd be awesome. But that's where you could potentially see a reversal of it. The reason being is because it's areas where we had short sellers get flushed out, and then we never saw a proper test of it. We saw this, which isn't really a proper test, but that's the reasoning for there. And then this actually has some high time frame confluence with it, right? Because these levels are from the beginning of the month, whereas right here would be fresh levels being made in real time. You bought Bitcoin at 120K and XRP on 3. What should I do? I mean, you got to make your own decision at that point. If you bought at 120K, what you could do if you want to stop the bleed is you could short it as a hedge. Like if you have Bitcoin holdings in spot, you could look to short Bitcoin against those holdings, because if your shorts get invalidated, then Bitcoin is on its way to recovering your spot where you're down on your spot. If your shorts don't get invalidated, then you've stopped the bleeding if Bitcoin continues to go lower, or at least managed it a little bit better. Because you don't want to do a perfect one-for-one short. But yeah, I appreciate the honesty, man. Unless you're trolling, I mean, it's not easy to admit that you've taken a bad trade, that's for sure. And 120k bad is relative. You could have ended up being right. The only reason I call it bad is because you don't really want to, buy the all-time high. You usually want to have some bought before you get to the all-time high. By the time you get to the all-time high, it's time to be critical of buys and potentially leaning into sells. Not always, but if it's an insignificant higher high, then leaning into sells. He said Kappa. Yeah, but at the same time, Kappa can just be like to hide the pain. Do you think this BART only price action is market makers making their money? I don't know if it's market makers necessarily. Just there is some manipulation going on, but manipulation can only be done when you're in a good, favorable market to do so. So a favorable market to do so would be a market that is, first off, unsure of where the price is going next, and then second off, a supply-sided market. So this is technically manipulation at some scale, but the manipulation wouldn't work if we had so much more demand than supply. It would look something like this, right? The manipulation would get punished. So manipulation does happen, but if it's not in favorable conditions, then it's less likely to work. Would like to buy Bitcoin at 30 to 50k. That might be a little bit greedy trying to get those prices, but who knows? It is possible. I just think that, we got to take it one step at a time. Nvidia's cooked. Yeah, Nvidia's a bit spooky. It actually had a good day today, but it's not really that much. The chart on Nvidia doesn't look very good, which is unfortunate because it's kind of holding up the S&P 500 market sentiment in a big way. But even when a common stock chart doesn't look that good, it can still fucking pump. Like, that's just been the theme, right? Stock market sometimes can look bad by, macro metrics as well as chart, but sometimes good old inflation and just keeps these assets pumping. Favorite spooky streamer? I'm not trying to... If you guys have been here for a while, the last couple years, I've been very bullish, man. I used to play the Pump It Up song and all that jazz. Like, I was trying to push Bitcoin up as much as I could and support it, but that's because the chart looked good. So it was easy for me to be like super bullish over here and bullish here because the chart was pointing towards that. Right now, the chart doesn't point towards that. But it doesn't mean that that can't change. The market just has to prove it to me. Because where we're at currently, all things considered, it doesn't look good. Could it look better? Yeah, eventually it will, no matter what. Just the question is, how long will that be? Bitcoin's not going to zero. Bitcoin's not going to die. It'll likely get another all-time high, like I said, but how long will that take? Could it be less than a year? Could it be less than a month? Or could it be multiple years? Which I don't think it'll be multiple years, but that is still also a possibility. Oh, I didn't tell you guys, but liquidity is still pretty strong. You can see they're trying to push it down right now. It's pretty aggressive. But we're reaching sort of that point where if you have something in the pressure cooker long enough, something massive is going to happen. And what you need in these kind of conditions when the chart doesn't look very good and something massive is brewing, you need the S&P to start cracking all-time highs. That's how you save this thing. And like I've said before, when we were doing these rallies and on the way down, whenever you're in a position where you need the bigger market cap to bail you out, that's already in a non-favorable position. That's already in a bad spot. It could happen, but you don't want to be reliant on that. Gold is just mooning. Yeah, the gold rally this is already a bit concerning to me on gold. The question is, like, why did we not get more out of it so far? We still have a couple days. Like I said, the rest of the week, Thursday, Friday for gold, it can get recovered, but anytime you go and make a new all-time high and it's lackluster, you have to ask yourself why. Now, I would still consider these equal lows, highs, by the way. So there's still short sellers on gold from October that haven't been invalidated yet, depending on their expiries. But so it's technically fine right now. But if we saw something like this happen on gold, it could lead to something a lot deeper. Silver looks fine though. Silver still looks good. And if you guys were late here for the Ethereum analysis, it's really quite unfortunate with Ethereum, because I honestly think if Bitcoin had an upward move here at some point that could actually hold, Ethereum would be doing way, way, way fucking better. But that's not the case. The reality we live in is that Bitcoin has been dumping, so Ethereum's been dumping as well. If Ethereum's not held at 23 to 2400, then the structure starts to crack. Got a little bit of breathing room here, but it must be held here. Otherwise, we challenge this structure. And if we challenge that structure, it means that there's a possibility we could go under 1400. So if we don't hold 2400, the probability of going under 1400 becomes higher. Are you buying Bitcoin spot at these levels? No. No. If it starts to look better, I will, but no. I still have holdings in Bitcoin, right? Even if I'm bearish, I don't sell everything. I just start to lean harder on the short selling. But I'm not looking to add on to buy Bitcoin at these levels. Just gonna keep the risk where it's at. Maybe add to the shorts a little bit more if we kick up higher. Would you buy spot altcoins? It's not a terrible spot to start DCAing into spot alts because they've been getting absolutely slaughtered. But the reason why I say DCA is because they could continue to get slaughtered. If this all plays out like it's played out in the past, then that would mean that there's a good chance there could be, and you have to track what Ethereum's doing, but there is a chance, like the way this played out in 2017 to 2018, which I think is this move that we've seen so far is most similar to that, way more similar to that than the COVID rallies. The way we saw that out is Bitcoin pumping into Q4, then showing weakness around December, which is what we're seeing happen right now. And then the alts rallied from January to February. I don't know if we're still in that same playing field because there was a lot less altcoins back then and there wasn't the meme coin market that was just absorbing all the fucking liquidity from retail. But that's the playbook if this is going to be the same way. And it's looking similar so far. ETH Bitcoin not looking horrible. Yeah, the crazy thing is ETH Bitcoin still looks okay, but it's close to not. You would assume that ETH Bitcoin would already be smashed by this point based off the price action we've seen this week, but it's technically not yet. It's not in a favorable spot, but it's also not broken yet. The structure hasn't broken yet, which is pretty impressive. Now it could still break. It could still break. And by the way, ETH Bitcoin chart doing well does not mean ETH is doing good against the dollar. It just means that it's weathering the downward moves on the dollar better than Bitcoin is. But yeah, you want to see, if you want an altcoin rally, you need this chart to go up. This is the most important chart to go up for an altcoin rally. ETH against Bitcoin. And it's still technically holding. It's getting a little sloppy and it could break, but it still is technically holding where it's at right now. I mean, guys, if you really believe that this isn't that bad, right, and you think Bitcoin's going to go up, then not financial advice, you buy Bitcoin if you want to buy Bitcoin. I just want to see the structure improve because I don't care about buying the bottom. I don't need to buy the bottom. I'm fine with buying higher lows, not necessarily higher highs, but I'm fine being a little bit late to the party, as long as I'm not too early. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. The altcoins have just been getting slaughtered. But yeah, we dipped a little bit into just in that last hour, we dipped a little bit into the liquidations on Bitcoin on the bottom side, which, oh, you guys can't really see. I didn't realize. Let me zoom out. There you go. On the 48 hour, we dipped into it a little bit, but then we haven't really dipped into all of the higher time frame ones yet. So that was kind of an appetizer to the actual downward movement. As you can see, like, we dipped into it a little bit here. Oh, you guys still can't see it. There we go. And then we still have some left behind. So that's where a real flood would come in, and you'd see the orders start to flood in on the right. But yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. And by the way, when we talk about market maker manipulation, it's usually discretionary market makers. It's not necessarily just market makers in general. But these kind of moments where Bitcoin shows weakness and people are very quick to exit profitable positions that are betting the market's going to go up, when we're in those kind of market conditions, it's perfect time for discretionary market makers to come in and start to manipulate it, because it's a lot easier for them to sort of flick a domino and then have the market sort of take care of the bigger move downward. Sometimes, and this was particularly true for last year, if you flick a domino and you try and push it down, but you don't have that fear sentiment in the market, you don't have the supply outweighing the demand, then it just bounces right back in your face. So it's a lot harder to manipulate. Manipulation is a thing, but you still need to do it in proper areas. You can't just decide to manipulate something wherever you want to do it. That's very risky. But I mean, if you have enough ammo and you've done it in the right area, then yeah, we're gonna see a chart that looks like this, which is just fucking insane, right? And then also you have to ask yourself a question, right? If we were still in such a strong bullish market, then why are we seeing this kind of price action? This wasn't really happening that much the last couple of years, where if we had a rally like this, okay, maybe it would dump, but back to where it pumped from, but would it be this violent? I don't know. There's definitely times in the past couple of years where we've had rallies and it's retraced the rally, but it's usually not that violent. It's usually the bulls put up a much better fight, and there's actually back running to the pump. But there's no back running happening on these pumps, so pump it, liquidate shorts, push to fill to be able to fill your own shorts, and then pull the bids. Once you pulled the bids and filled your shorts, start to close some longs into profit to flick the domino, and the market takes care of the rest. How do you get a lot of short sells filled at the same time? You take out all the short sellers at the same time. Problems with alts is that they could easily go again from this point, 70%. Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, but if you really love a particular altcoin and you really want to buy it, we're probably still in the area of DCAing, where it's first you have to decide, are you going to be a passive holder of the altcoin, or are you going to be an active investor? If you're an active investor, you need to have an invalidation where you cut the loss. If you're passive holding and you truly just believe in it and you don't want to touch the position, I think you still are in the realm of having to dollar cost average. I don't know if it's time to go full port punt into altcoins where they're at right now. It's still a bit scary to do that. It could work, but you're going to need some luck. And as a trader or investor, you want to try and minimize the amount of luck that you need, even though any trade or investment has an element of luck that's paired with it. You just want to try and minimize that factor relative to skill. Come on, Biddy, you're so close to cracking. I'm not necessarily rooting for Bitcoin to go down, but at least we'll have our answer on what's going to happen next. We just need to flush out the lows at 85. Would you long at 84.4? I don't know how deep this is going to dive because there's no high time frame levels I can yield to for it. So as far as where we could long it, if we wanted to go for an aggressive long, have to wait for all the longs to get fucked. And then we have to see how it behaves afterwards. Because if it's a straight shot down, like if we see this, right, then there's no opportunity to long it. But if we see demand start to slam the market, and we honestly might see something really cheeky like an equal low there, because that happens a lot, then there's an opportunity for a potential long. And it's not necessarily a long that I would be confident in saying that it's going to be the position that takes you to an all-time high, so you have to take profits on it like you would any other position. But even more importantly, in circumstances like this, if you're not confident that the long is going to have legs to it, and it's already difficult to grab in the first place, then this is mainly for the people who have a lot of experience on the lower time frames. If you don't, then it could get kind of difficult to grab a position here. Because what we could see, like if we were to zoom in here, what we could see is like this really cheeky stuff where you make like a bunch of insignificant lower lows before you get the pop, and this you try and long it, stopped out, and then eventually it pops. And then you need this move to pay for all the losses here. And depending on how tight your stop losses are and how quick you are to take losses, it might not be enough of a move to be able to rebound it, because there's no guarantee we'll even get this much out of it, but we'll see. That's infinite support. If this is going to be reminiscent of 2017, 2018, then this quote-unquote pattern, I guess, that I talk about, but really just visualizing liquidity, this kind of stuff is really important to understand. Like this sort of sequence is really important to understand, because this is exactly the type of stuff that was happening in 2017, 2018. Stack the lows, flush the lows, stack the highs, flush the highs. That's where we're at right now on the because we've got two highs in both circumstances. They weren't really hovering there for a long time, so there's not necessarily a lot of liquidity that's resting there, because market participants didn't have a lot of time to have the same positions. Bitcoin might want to do it right now. But that just means that not only are the highs further away relative to how close the lows are together, you also we didn't spend that much time down there, or up there, sorry. So it wasn't a ton of time for retail to dogpile into the same position, whereas longs, we had multiple days of hovering here at the same time, so you have a lot of retail with the same invalidations. This was rather quick, and then what we have right now as well. So long positions have had more time to cluster in the same area, and they're closer together. It doesn't necessarily mean this is a good area to short unless you're really aggressive, because most of the time you want to trade it like an ebb and a flow, right? You want to wait for it to kick up again and then look to short it before you jump in. But yeah, there's a lot of fear coming in right now. I mean, this is an incredibly nasty 4-hour red candle. It retraced, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fucking green candles in one 4-hour candle red. That's pretty bad engulfing. But it is the infinite support, so it must hold. But as you guys know, right, like, the market's just supply and demand, buyers and sellers at its very core. And you're always going to have constant selling pressure. And it doesn't really affect the market that much as long as you have constant buying pressure. But once that FOMO starts to evaporate and you lose the constant buying pressure, then you can get short squeezes, but if you can't back run it, if you don't have the bids to support it, it's going to come crumbling down. And keep in mind, guys, on a very, very high time frame, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. Like I said, I think it's more... Oh, there's the flood. You see that? There it goes. Ooh. There it goes. So longs just got flushed right there. We'll have a look at the data here in a second. God, that was nasty. I don't know if it's done just yet. I'm gonna check the data in a second. I just want to see how it subsides. So that's what we've been waiting for. Was that, and then we'll see if it goes a little bit lower here. It's still hands off time right now. Here it comes. Another wave. Let's see, what did we get down to there? 84.7 on Binance? I don't think we got it all. Solana's dying. I shouldn't have been so bearish on Solana. Oh, we got a good portion of it there. Yeah, that was a good chunk of it. It's like the majority of it just got wiped out there. Solana? Yeah. We have a 4-hour closing in like 18 minutes. Let's see how bad that liquidation was. 150,000 traders were liquidated in the last 24 hours. What about the last hour? Can we look at that? Okay, 100 million. Mainly on Hyperliquid. Interesting. Hyperliquid just felt the heat. What about that guy who has the $500 million position on Hyperliquid? How's he doing? Does he still have that open? Do you guys know? Oh, he still has it open. He's down 71 million in less than a week, it looks like. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Solana. You gotta wait for like 110 to 112 on Solana. That's gonna be the final fight. More, he has 3 positions, so he's down over 100 million this week. That's fucking nuts, dude. I know people in the chat are like, oh, he's just gonna keep adding on to his positions, but I explained how that works. Like, this is what we're seeing right now in the markets. What we're seeing is people who have long positions who are very stubborn to take the L. People with longs right now really don't want to take the L. So what are they doing? They're selling coins to add to their leverage margin, and they're all doing it at the same time, which is how you get to a downward spiral. The biggest issue is just the long leverage in the system is very stubborn right now because it's, I mean, I don't know. It's more stubborn than it has been. I'd imagine it's because the meme coin traders or something, but the market participants in crypto right now are somehow less sophisticated than they've been in a while. There it goes. There's another wave. And so as a result, they don't want to take the L, dude. They're just going to keep adding margin to losing positions. And it's not like they've got a bunch of liquid fucking lying around to do so. So they're going to sell spot to add to margin at the same time. Usually this time it's very quiet in the markets. Yeah, I think I was a bit too bearish. I think I was speaking a little bit too bearish. Uh-oh, did the playlist end? Oh, there we go. Phil No Chill, what's up, Dr. Phil No Chill? First time chatter says, I think Sailor and Trump, etc. just reeled in the normies at the top. They're now longing all the way down to 40K for the next 12 months. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I honestly, I don't think those people that you mentioned, I don't think they were trying to trap anyone. I think they're just maybe only can see the price going up and they can't see the price going down at all. When people can only see one side of the market, they're going to get punished. Like, if you're only bearish, right? And you've been only bearish the last couple years, then the market has just been slaughtering you because it's been going higher and higher. Right? If you're only bearish during this period, you've been absolutely slaughtered. And if you're only bullish during a downward period, it's going to be the same thing. If you want to be a trader, you have to be able to see both sides. And just know that there's always an ebb and a flow. Things don't go up forever. They don't go down forever. But anytime you see like a void open up, right? What is a void opening up? It's just like if you just keep going up really fast for a long time. Then what about all this space right here? It's a void, right? Same thing if you're going down really fast. Oh my god. There we go. Then you've got all this space right here. Doesn't mean that you have to come in and fill all this space, but that's the ebb and the... Normally a market is just up, down, where you're filling the void and you're sort of building a staircase up. That's much healthier of an uptrend, although it takes longer than this. Because at the end of the day, a lot of buying at the same time can prop up a price, but what holds the price there? What maintains the price to stay there? There it goes, there's another wave. The person that just market buys Bitcoin is not helping the Bitcoin price. I mean, it does help the price, but it doesn't help the demand in the books. Like, Saylor just punting all into Bitcoin again and again and again is going to pump up the price, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll hold the price there. And if you do it with a lot of exuberance, it makes it even harder for the market participants or market makers that are trying to maintain the float. It makes it even more difficult for them. Because it's more expensive to maintain the float the higher you get it. So really, you might hate market makers, right? For whatever reason, because you think that they go after your stop loss or whatever. But in reality, a lot of the time, they're the ones that are holding the price up there. And it's not like everybody can get upset like that the market maker has decided to be less aggressive on the buying side, because if they weren't even in the buying side of the books, then it would just be, I mean, that's what you saw on October 10th, right? Wouldn't it be bad if we bounce at 84? Yeah, it would technically be bad, but it's just, it doesn't mean that it won't work out. Yeah, it's still hands off right now, boys. I'm gonna mark this out on the, so we need to regain, hey, use a magnet on that, yeah, I did, okay. We need to regain 146, so like, we need to get back above that. If it can't get back above that, then it's hands off still. It still means that we're likely gonna go a lot lower. Wow, that's fucking insane. Look at how much market buying came in this last hour, and we got a big red candle. That's fucking crazy. We had way more people pressing the green button than the red button, but the market just tanked hard. What's up, Latvian Sniper? That's pretty abnormal right there. We must have the S&P dumping a bit right now. That would explain it, yeah. So the S&P dumping at the same time. That's fucking crazy though. Because you don't really expect distribution to happen at the relative lows. You'd expect it at the relative highs. Distribution happening at the relative lows shows a lot of panic from market makers. Okay, so now we are in the battlefield right now. We have to see who wins this. But since we took out the lows, we're now entering the battlefield. So the orders should continue to roll in pretty consistently here, and there should be a lot of indifference about. So it should be a lot of mixture of green and red right now. and pretty consistent orders flooding in because we just took out the lows. So this is an area where you'll see shorts taking profit and some aggressive longs starting to come in. And it's also an area that you'll see aggressive shorters enter the market. Yeah, there's a lot of naked market shorts coming in at the same time too, yeah. But yeah, this is a highly contested territory pretty much that we're in right now. God, the 4 hour is gonna close here in like 8 minutes, but look at how nasty that candle is. Jesus Christ. New 4 hour sweep and pump. Yeah, that might be the case, Simplic. That's not a bad idea. So new 4 hour bottom wick early into pump might be, we'll see. The thing is, like, people are smashing in with the green button, but it's not doing shit right now. So it could be a lot of Coinbase selling that's coming in right now. So a lot of Binance buying, but Coinbase selling. Yeah, that might be the case. Or Bitfinex buying too. What to do with your short? Well, taking profits isn't a bad move. It doesn't mean that it can't go lower though. We'll see what happens on the new 4 hours. So that's in 7 minutes. We'll see how this, it should spark up the next sort of fight. No bull market unless XRP hits 50 cents or below. That's a far way down for XRP still. Why does XRP have to go under 50 cents before we get a bull market? Because Bitcoin's market cap is way fucking bigger than XRP. If you're just now joining, by the way, this line was not an area where I was saying to buy it, which I should probably label it. This line is where all the longs were stacked in at the same time. So we were waiting for it to get flushed. It just got flushed. Now what we're waiting for is to see if we can regain it, which is on the low time frame is right here. We need to see this regained. Until it's regained, it's hands off still. Like I said, I told you guys, I'm not interested in buying the bottom if this is the bottom, because it might not be. It might be even lower. But even if it is, I'm not interested in getting the absolute bottom. I'm okay with being a little bit late to the party. And like I told you guys earlier, this long right here is really aggressive because we don't have high time frame confluence, so it could get pretty messy. What we could see is some really cheeky stuff, like regaining this, and then eventually taking out these lows again, and then finally seeing the pop up. So in order to get a good long here, it might take multiple stabs at it. I don't know. The Coinbase, somebody on Coinbase must be selling like crazy right now because Binance is showing a good amount of buying coming in. The good news is arbitrage market making is probably farming hard right now. I imagine the spreads are pretty big. They usually are during times like this. Let's just see like if they're farming if they're arbitraging the perpetuals. Yeah. So these two charts side by side, obviously one is high time frame, one is low time frame. But also the difference is this is the spot chart and this is the leverage chart. You can see that the spot chart is trading at around, oh, they're starting to even out a bit here, but 670, 84, 670, and this is trading at 84, 630. So there's a bit of a spread between the two, but they're starting to close the gap a bit. Not the brain rot 6-7 meme, please, chat. Not on a day like this. No rage baiting on a day like this. There's too much red. I'm gonna get angry. I'm gonna get mad. I said 670, I think. I didn't say 6-7, but I guess now I just did. What is 6-7? It's like brain rot rage bait. You know the type of jokes that aren't necessarily funny, but it's funny that the person is reacting to the fact that it's not funny. Like a rage bait. Which, by the way, is such fucking childish comedy. Like, come on now. But yeah, that's what I think it is. I don't think anyone actually finds 6-7 funny. I think they find how people react to the fact that it's not funny. Yeah, it's a spooky 4-hour candle. Good news is it's gonna close in about 2 minutes here, so, or 3 minutes. Alright, we're gonna get another leg down. Remember, it's still hands off right now, boys. We could see another wave come in right now. So the Americans are panic selling because Coinbase is still pumping. Interesting. What's your opinion on gloving? I don't know what gloving is. Alright, we go under this low, we're gonna get another flood that comes in. Because people that are taking longs right now are gonna be very quick to jump out of them. It's really difficult to grab a long, so it's only gonna be sophisticated market participants at a very high level, which usually means that they're gonna be cutting losses very quickly and then re-entering. We just had a decent sized liquidation come in. Like on this move here is about 100 million when we flushed out these lows. But you still have some stubborn longs that don't want to give up just yet. The market will force them to give up though, most of the time. Or maybe they'll get bailed out, but I don't like to be in those kind of positions personally. I'm gonna play a little bit more of an upbeat playlist. That one was a bit too slow. The Hyperliquid Whale, he's down like 100 million this week. Every time I buy, it's going at its lowest. Hey, it's better to be buying on dips than it is on pumps though, in general. But if you're doing it with leverage, you have to be very precise. You have to sort of sit on your hands and wait. That's okay. Would you rather sit in a losing position waiting for the market to bail you out, or sit and wait for a winning position? Easier said than done, but just remember that just because you can trade doesn't mean that you should. It's okay to have to wait sometimes. Alright, they're gonna give us another flush here at the lows. They're putting up a little bit of a fight, but the structure doesn't look that good. The dumping continues until morale improves, maybe, or we wait till morale is so fucking bad, and that's the bottom. Because we still have a lot of longs that are stubborn and won't give up. Alright, here it goes. Yeah, I mean, it's a good amount of buying coming in. It's just not moving the needle at all right now. Alright, new 4-hour is open. New 4 hours open, boys. That bottom wick doesn't seem deep enough to me, so this still looks like a bait. If I can get back above 85, 150, then maybe, but a bottom wick like that still looks like a bait. These sells are people taking profit from 24K. This is the top wick. Oh no. Please, sir, stop the selling. Somebody stop the selling. Guys, why are you guys selling? Why are you pressing the red button? Yeah, trading and investing, yes, Mark. Some passive stuff, but mainly active. I'm shorting because the sentiment is dog meat. It's kind of too late to short right here. You'd have to be really aggressive to try and short it right here. But if you got the short from a lot higher up, then that makes sense. But like right here is sort of for the pigs. Oh, you're short from 94? Yeah, then you're big chillin'. Yeah, that's how you do it. I mean, that was a nice little bounce back. Once something has pumped a lot or dumped a lot, when we've been consolidating, it's not necessarily good to chase it. We're going to the all-time high from here. Lamatch, you got your long filled. All right, we still got a lot of ground to regain here, but it starts with 147, 146, I guess, technically. So shorts are taking profit after getting longs filled, and then we just wait. Bears are spreading copium. I think bears generally spread FUD. Alrighty. Let's see, Biddy, you got any life in you? S&P doing? S&P is gonna be closing pretty soon. It's like an hour left on the S&P. Whoops. Okay, S&P showing some life here, helping Biddy along a bit. Feels like every pump is a reason to add shorts. Yeah, I told you guys the last couple months that every rally I see on Bitcoin, I'm going to be really critical of. I wasn't saying that because I disliked Bitcoin, as you guys know. You can see what's happened the last couple months. Once you break a certain structure, you have to, like, let's say like the bottom side structure gets broken, right? You have to be really critical on any upward movements after that until it starts to rebuild the structure. If it doesn't rebuild it, then a rally just leads to a short squeeze, which leads to a dump. And the same thing for the top side, right? If top side structure gets broken, then you can be a lot more confident in the rallies. You think the S&P is going to dump 5% in a day? I don't know about that. Okay. That's a good claim so far. Let's see. This is a little battle taking place for this level right now. They're trying to push through it. So this battle is where we're at right now is a very important one. You need the S&P to help right now. Bitcoin needs help from the S&P. Been slowly DCAing in alts, but man, most of them look so overexhausted. Yeah, I mean, that's the only play right now. If you really want to get into alts, it's just slow DCA. What are your thoughts on NASDAQ wanting to expand trading hours? It's a good question. I think having the markets closed is actually bullish for the markets. If you expand it to 23 hours trading hours, you're more susceptible to fear getting out of control. Because when you have like the weekend, right? Like for instance, when you have Friday close into Monday open, that's a lot of time for people to sort of become less fearful. Or if you have like a daily close, like the S&P will close here pretty soon. If there's a lot of people that are scared, maybe they'll be less scared after they've slept on it. Because really the only thing that pops a bubble is that mass fear at the same time. Good idea to long ME. Is this the right one? Gulf Coast Jet up-down futures. I don't think this is the one you're talking about. Is it ME USDT? Ooh. God damn. There's nothing that leads me to believe that there's a good long right now. It might work, but it's pretty random. It's too late to short it too. This is like inactionable. You have to wait for something to start to form. What's dude, the funding on this must be fucking crazy. Oh, I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah, man, it's too fucking random. Like, it might work, but you need a ton of luck on your side for this to work. There's like nothing that points me towards longing it where it's at currently. You don't need to catch the bottom. You gotta wait for something to develop. Drop? What do you mean drop is in 3 days? Like the airdrop? Would that be onto like ETH, or how would they? I think what were they saying they're gonna make it on ETH? I think that might be right. I'm not sure though. Yeah, man, there's nothing to talk about here. This thing's fucking dusted. Watch we look at it tomorrow and it's pumped like 30%. And he had some magical fucking reason as to why. What does that mean for ETH? Just don't worry about that kind of stuff. Just watch the price. I mean, long term, sure, it could help the demand, but I wouldn't. It's like if good CPI numbers or whatever don't lead me to be like, oh, better long today. Everything's gonna go up. Who cares what the price chart looks like? Good news is here. That means price goes up. Yeah, no, that's not how I view it. I'm telling you, the best example for this is how the S&P 500 behaves when rates are cut. Historically, you would think really bullish news, right? Like, it doesn't get more bullish than lowering interest rates. Should lead to the market going up, but that's not what happens normally. And the reason that's not what happens is because you're fighting like you're fighting a wave when you should just be surfing it. Just tuning in now. How to take my grandpa to a few appointments. Hope your grandpa's doing okay. Will this be uploaded to YouTube? Yeah, this VOD will be uploaded to YouTube later today. Which, Leo, if you're still here, you can show the YouTube and pin it in the chat if you want. For all the people just joining, we're waiting to see if Bitcoin can actually reclaim this. I still think this 4 hour is such a bait, dude. You really gonna have no wick after that size of a candle? That's a question for the programmers in the chat. Oh, cool, bro. I'm not really I'm not really an expert in that kind of stuff. You got your long filled? Best of luck to you, man. Colander, what led you to longing it where you did? I'm not trying to beat you up on it, I'm just curious as to what... Because I usually am looking over here on the high time frame to find something. The 1 minute retest, gain retest. I mean, good luck, man. The 4 hour? Just the smallest fucking wick on the 4 hour after a huge red candle. I don't know. I'm not completely convinced by it. $84.6 would... What? Would have been the test? 84.6? No. I mean, it depends on how you trade, man. If that's how you trade, then more power to you. Obviously, it's working out right now. But the way I trade, no. Alright, the battle for this level happens again. Should have a better shot at it on the second time. Probably gains now, loses it again, and makes... Yeah, probably. That's what I'm thinking. Is... debate all the longs. And then, over the course of the day until tomorrow, take out the lows one more time and then send it. And then this could actually have some legs to it. But if you don't, like, if we do eventually somewhere later today go for these lows again, and you don't see, like, it just is a straight shot down, then yeah, there's no opportunity. It's not like you would have resting limit orders for like an equal low. You have to wait for like this to happen. And then it looks better. But that might take a while because it seems like shorts are taking profit here, which is pushing it up a bit. I don't like to time it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened in the early mornings for Europe when that play actually happens. But it's impossible to know on time base. Just seen some other things like that happen. We have insane bear div forming on the daily. There's no good div anywhere right now. If you're talking about like this, it's not. It's already completed anyways. Can you send a TradingView chart? Yeah, just I need one of the mods to verify that the link is safe. Because normally TradingView links are fine, but if there's like it could be slightly altered. No, that looks fine. TradingView.com, I don't see anything wrong with that link. Alright, let's see what... Yeah, I don't trade like this though, man. Is this like a fair value gap or something? You use RSI? I use RSI too, man. If you're talking about this, right? If you're talking about this, it would be the low that created it. So that's already been taken out. That's already come to fruition. And it's not that great of a bear div. on USDT dominance. I don't use technical indicators on those types of charts, although it's probably not a bad thing too. I just generally don't. Yeah, and you don't even have daily bull div. Maybe a 4 hour. Let's see, how tight is it? Nah. No, that looks good. God, a rejection here is gonna get bad. You really want to reclaim this. I don't know how they haven't done it yet. Because then you have a fucking support resistance flip on a prior 4 hour that was disgusting. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, boys, hold your horses here. No need to rush in just yet. Although the longs that you're talking about, oh cool bro, how much did you get out of them? Yeah, you got your 0.7 out of it. Almost a % move. What's your view on alts short to medium term? Short term, you need Bitcoin to start forming better structure. Medium term, maybe. But you need Ethereum to start doing really well. Like even today is a good example of what we've been seeing, right? So right now my watch list, it says that Bitcoin's down 1.4% and Ethereum's down 0.9%. So that's a good sign. You want to continue to see that happen. Anytime there's a dump on Bitcoin, Ethereum dumps less. And the other thing you really want to pay attention to is this structure on ETH against Bitcoin. This needs to hold. And it's kind of in random zone right now. This right here, you don't even want to really come back to it, but since you had a pretty deep dive here, I guess it's okay if you do. It's just not ideal. Honestly, the best case scenario is holding it where it's at right now currently, but it's kind of in the random zone, so it's hard to say that it actually will. But if this chart continues to look good and the structure continues to hold on ETH against Bitcoin, and then eventually Bitcoin will find a rally with some legs to it, that's usually when the alts should pop off. So like, let's say that Bitcoin's trading at like 70K, and it finally builds good structure and it finally gets a good rally going back up to like 90, 100K, and Ethereum is doing good during that time, then you could see alts actually have some life to them. No, you're using the disconnect that we're having, El Cool Bro, is you're using the low time frame to guide your directional based bias. Using the low time frame is mainly to get the best risk reward. Directional bias, I use the high time frame. Oh, if you're just taking quick scalps, then yeah, you're good, man. If you're taking quick scalps and after accounting for fees, you got almost a % out of that that Bitcoin long, that's fine then. I like to wait for, like when I scalp, I like to wait for spots where the scalp will actually lead to a runner or could lead to a runner. So I really only like to start looking to scalp if I know that I can not only get my profit target, but then also could I get even more out of the position. Because that's what really pays for the losers in the long run, is when you have positions that actually go the distance. It's good to take profit on positions, but you also want to set yourself in a spot where the position can get you can get a lot more out of it. And so that's why I use the high time frame before I decide to start going low time frame. But if you're really good at just scalping it on the low time frame, then more power to you. 68K on the way? Maybe. One step at a time, man. You trade on the weekends? Generally, I don't trade on the weekends, no. Sometimes the chart, like, you know, the alarms will just be buzzing and the chart's in a really interesting spot. But generally speaking, I don't, no. I might manage some things with trades that are already open, right? but that's about it usually. I don't like to enter new positions unless the chart is just telling me that it's the time to do so. Just feels weird with the majority down like 55% since highs. Yeah, I mean, it's all relative. So like alts are getting beaten up while stock market's making all-time highs. But how much, like even Dogecoin, for example, how much did Dogecoin run? By the way, this got fucked. But how much did Dogecoin run to the top side? Like if you look at it from this perspective, it's still up quite a lot in the last 5 years. But the last year or two, it's getting slaughtered, right? So if you're just zooming into this picture, it's getting slaughtered. But if you take the whole thing into context, it technically still has more room to even come down. It's just, yeah, you don't want to revisit the lows that were printed in early October. That'd be no bueno. So like, we had a crazy upward move. It's not unreasonable to believe that there isn't a gap or a void here. Same thing with Bitcoin too. Like, if you narrow in on the last couple months on Bitcoin, it looks atrocious. But if you zoom out, it's like we actually went on quite a run here. And we have retraced, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't really that much of a retrace so far. All right, let's see here. They're looking to fight. Can they reclaim it? They're going for another go at it, boys. Let's see if they can do it. Still no bottom wick that's significant. Seems a little bit like a bait to me, but we'll see. God, they cannot win this battle, dude. What's crazy about this is we're in bull territory right now. So we're pretty deep into bull territory, so you'd think that they'd be able to win this battle. Like if we were, let's say we were over, let me zoom in a bit. Let's say we were right here. This would be bear territory where you'd see bears really stepping in. But right now we're in bull territory, so we should see bulls stepping in. Is Tesla going to be bullish or bearish this week? Tesla's still at the mercy of the overall market sentiment, but it's done a lot of good things so far. If it does go bearish, we could see a retest of around like 412. And then if this is held, then it's rocket ship time. Or it could just be this, but if let's say the S&P turns sour and a lot of things go down, we could see a flush on Tesla back down to 412. And then this must be held though. If this isn't held, then we go lower than this low and we created a void, so it could if this doesn't hold, it could be like something like that. Yeah, that's the structure's good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that approach, cool bro. That's pretty much how you want to do it, is you want to use the high time frame to know where good areas are to have a bias. And then you can go to the low time frame and start taking scalps. And usually the fluidity on the lower time frame, like, how do I say this? If we're in an area that's like bull territory, right? On the high time frame, then you want to look for longs. And not only is it a good time to long, but usually the movements on the bottom side of that low time frame will be less random, whereas the movements on the top side of that low time frame will be a little bit more random. So not only do you get better fluidity, so you get better entries that are less random, but you also have the directional bias to use as well. All right, can they do it, boys? What's up, Prosperity? Doing pretty good. How about you? CS2 market better than crypto right now? I heard the CS2 market got slaughtered though, right? It's a centralized market. It's recovered? Wow. I wish there was a way we could see the chart on TradingView. But it's there's like the top tier items, right? And then there's the tier right below the top tier items. And that was the big thing where you could convert the tier below into the tier above. So I'm sure that the tier below has been doing really good. The tier above is probably still slaughtered though right now. Which I think is like knives and stuff. Knives and gloves and that kind of stuff. It's been a while since I played Counter-Strike. Alright, so you guys know the what I'm looking for here. There's two scenarios that could provide a good long. The first one is where we're kind of at right now, regaining it and then potentially seeing a retest and then going for a big run up to 87, 88, potentially higher. And then the other scenario is regaining it, doing some cheeky stuff, taking out the low one more time and then going for it. And then if this doesn't hold on the sweep, then it's like that. So this would be like the area to pay attention to if you want to be a little bit more passive. The issue with this one is sometimes they might not give it to you, right? Sometimes it'll be like this and you'll get left behind. But if you're more passive, then you'd wait for this to happen somewhere later in the day. And then if you're more aggressive, then obviously there's some people in the chat who have already started to grab longs in this area. It's not necessarily a bad area to grab longs, it's just a little bit more aggressive. But if we do go to sweep this again, you need to see a really strong rebound. If you don't, then there's no opportunity. Yeah, Coinbase and Binance are at a huge disagreement, the market participants. So it looks like there was a lot of selling coming in on Coinbase the last hour. And now there's a lot of selling and now there's a lot of buying. The last hour on Coinbase, it looks like there was a lot of selling. And then this hour, it looks like there's a lot of buying. And then Binance is kind of doing the inverse. But still hands off on Bitcoin right now, unfortunately. Wish I could get rid of all this without getting rid of the line. Is it like 147, right? 146? Right there. And this level right here that I'm using is from this over here on the high time frame. So this is like the high time frame. This is from Monday. And then I have it placed here. It looks random because but it's the same as this. Well, we have the one big war zone that we're in right now, but sometimes, and I've seen this happen, particularly in markets that are pretty supply heavy, sometimes they'll do a little cheeky something where they'll take out the lows and then they'll send it. So basically, I say they, but really all it is there should be a lot of liquidity down there, and if you make a new low, then it's taking profits on the short sells. Oh, it has recovered quite nicely. Yeah, collectible markets are doing pretty good, but that's usually an indication of max exuberance. Like any kind of collectible markets, like NFTs, for example, were a pretty good sign that we were near the top. But even like baseball cards or Pokemon cards or anything that's collectibles that you can buy and trade and sell, when they're doing really good, it's usually not necessarily a bad thing, but it just means that greed is off the charts. Are we ever going to see the recovery of NFTs? That is the question. It might take a while. sure with the rise of AI art, NFTs might be more and more appealing. I don't know though. I'm not in that space. Nice 4-hour close on Biddy. Yeah. Well, NFTs is just like buying art, right? I don't know. I think NFTs are probably a super late gameplay. They're probably not coming back anytime soon, but when they do, it'll be a big move back. To get into special clubs, yeah, that stuff. It's not fundamentals. Like same thing with crypto for the most part. There's very few cryptos out there that have realistic price to earning ratios, but most of them they don't make any money. Like you have to be honest with what something is. Like an NFT, the getting into special clubs and stuff like that, like that's not gonna have legs to it. Like Bitcoin, for example, doesn't make money, but it's kind of novelty. And then the other part about it is it's now got legacy because it's gotten big enough. It usually won't fail. Once you get to a 2 trillion market cap, you can have big pullbacks, but it doesn't mean that it's game over. What's up, Quantum? Since I know my chat, there's a lot of programmers in here, a lot of coders in here. How realistic do you guys think the FUD coming in from quantum computing cracking Bitcoin, how realistic do you think that is? Because I've heard mixed opinions on it. It's not really my space, so I'm not very good at understanding it. But that's like the big thing, right? Quantum computing is going to crack Bitcoin. Do you think that's actually going to happen? Or is that just FUD? It's so funny though. It's usually like after we've dumped a good amount, then everybody comes in with all these different FUD things. Bitcoin is useless. I wouldn't say Bitcoin's useless. I mean, if something is useless, how do I put this? You can argue that gold is useless. And yes, you can say like, oh, gold has practical industrial use cases, like you can use gold for XYZ, but to justify the market cap that gold is at currently, you can't justify the current gold market cap by saying it's because it has good industrial use cases. It would be a lot lower in market cap if that was the only, like look at other metals, for example, that like copper, that actually does have a lot of use case. Why is copper a fraction of the market cap of gold, even though it's more useful? What Bitcoin is useful for, it's not completely useless. What Bitcoin is useful for and what gold is useful for is protecting yourself from governments. And I'm not saying like protecting confiscation, like they can still confiscate gold or Bitcoin from you. I'm saying protecting yourself from monetary policy. So if the money that you have that's in fiat is eventually going to be worthless one day, how do you store the value of that money? And how do I know that fiat is eventually going to be useless one day? Because every empire has followed the same fucking playbook. It's always happened in history. And it's part of nature. Does anyone understand how quantum computer works, calculates? I only watch a few videos and articles about it. I'm under the assumption that nobody really understands quantum computing. But there's probably some people in the chat that believe that they understand it. What do you think will happen to Bitcoin in a couple hours from now? Some volatility might come in from a Japanese announcement, but most of the time it's going to lead to a chop. You're just going to get a lot of orders that flood in at the same time, but usually it doesn't lead to anything that has legs to it. Another 20% dip. 20% dip because the Japanese raised the rates. That's crazy. Maybe like a couple percent dip, not 20. When's the last time you guys saw Bitcoin move 20% in one day? It's been a while. Used to happen all the time. It is technically possible, yes. One of the first fundamental truths that you have to accept about any financial market where there's buying and selling is that anything's fucking possible. The S&P could be down 50% in a month. That is technically possible. Now, the question is it likely? No, it's not likely. I'll be surprised in a couple hours. Maybe I will be. I don't know. I just trade the chart, man. If you believe that some announcement is going to have significant influence, I could see that. But usually that significant influence isn't polarized. Like normally it's not just everybody sells at the same time or everybody buys at the same time. There's usually a mixture of buying and selling, regardless if the news is good or bad. So what you could argue right now is a lot of selling came in prior to that announcement, and by the time it does get announced, that selling will be taking profits and it'll reverse. But usually the chart gives us the answer anyways, or at least gets us closer to the answer. Yeah, I don't know. The whole quantum computing thing cracking Bitcoin, I guess it's a possibility, but I think it's probably overestimated, like most things are. Yeah, there's going to be less market participants next week, obviously, and the week after because of the holidays. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the price action will be bad. You just have to be able to take profits on positions. Like when we chop like this, it really does fuck people who are newer. Like I got really good from trading Forex. And this kind of stuff is what I like to see. I know that people don't like it, but there's more rhyme and reason to the reversals, and there's a lot of reversals. Like people call this like bad price action or whatever. For my approach, I kind of like it. And when you have less market participants, we're going to see more manipulation. So more manipulation means more predictability. Manipulation is not a bad thing. In fact, like I've said in the past, if there was no manipulation, then we wouldn't have jobs as traders, because then the market would be completely random. Gold was majestic today. Yeah, gold, this is like the last fucking short sell possible before gold takes off. So I said here was the last spot to hedge, which is technically true, but that's because I was expecting this to actually pop when we went for it. It's pretty concerning that it hasn't popped yet. Like once you go for it, you really have to go for it. And so why has it not so far? It's just a bit concerning. It's only 1 day close below, but once you start doing this kind of stuff, then it could lead to a lot deeper. So it's fine if you want to hover here, but you don't want to start seeing some bigger drawdowns on gold. Just remember, anytime a significant area is being tested, like a new all-time high is pretty straightforward. That's pretty significant. Then you want to see, you want to see you know, you don't want to see a lackluster all-time high, unless it's the S&P. But that's because the S&P just makes all-time highs every fucking week. Like the S&P is kind of a different beast, but. I didn't show you guys this, but thankfully the 10-year started to drip low again. I was getting a little concerned there. It's a good sign. What you don't want to see is you don't want to see a lack of demand in the bond market paired with unemployment going up. That's spooky combination. Lack of demand in the bond market, even when you have QE underway, so even when you have the money printer going to give demand to the bond market, and it still can't do, the yield still doesn't fall, paired with unemployment, that's like a recipe that most institutional investors and most quote-unquote smart finance people have not seen in their lifetime very consistently, which would be more reminiscent to something prior, like the Great Depression. What's your view on Bitcoin Cash? Bitcoin Cash has been a fucking beast, dude. It's been a fucking beast. Yeah, this is a Bitcoin Cash chart. It looks like it's getting ready to pop. The question is, will it drop a bit more before it pops? Because it has some room to do that. But I mean, you can see short sellers on Bitcoin Cash for the last 2 years are all in the same fucking spot. Like, this structure is looking better and better. But if you're gonna long it with leverage, you run the risk of something like this happening first before it pops. So you get tagged out of your position before it comes to fruition. And if you're afraid of that, then just wait to see if it does have that pullback to around there. And then it looks pretty good. Is it the new Zcash? Dude, there's something about Bitcoin Cash. I think it might be Tether or the boys from Tether or something, but it's gotten a lot of, it looks like someone's really trying to help this thing out. Tether FUDs, Bitcoin Cash, yeah, I don't know, dude. The way it trades and stuff is different than a lot of other cryptos, because most cryptos that have decent market cap have similar liquidity providers and market makers like Wintermute. But this thing it is similar to Zcash, where it decouples from the market sentiment quite often. In 2017, when the fork happened, Tether pumped Bitcoin so that Bitcoin Cash lost the war. Yeah, I don't know if it's a Tether boys, but somebody's helping this thing out. It's like similar to Tron, right? Or Zcash, where you just have old school crypto whales helping it out. Like, when you look at the volume analytics of something like Tron or Bitcoin Cash, it doesn't really support its strength. However, the volume analytics on Zcash do support its strength. Yeah, Monero play is still working out nicely. Dude, look how much of a beast the Monero chart is. Monero wants higher. All right, well, you guys know what the plan is for today. If you were late here, then the recording for the stream will be posted on YouTube in a couple hours, so you can check it out there for what the plan is. But I appreciate everybody stopping by and chilling. Let me get some GGs in the chat. Where are all my lurkers at? Lurkers, show yourself. Put a GG in the chat. Gooba Dom. We'll do marbles next stream. Alright boys, as always, be safe out there, use good risk management, wait for the price to come to you. Your signal group is the best. Yeah guys, I'm starting a signal group, so make sure you keep your eyes out for that. I guess the new people here won't know that I'm joking. I don't have a signal group. Yeah, everything's free here. There's no courses. There's no signal group. Alright, take care, boys.